First and foremost, I want to make it very clear that I am not an advocate of getting back into abusive, tumultuous, toxic relationships as a means of forgiveness. I'm not even here to endorse going to a person and telling them that you forgive them. Because when it's all said and done, true forgiveness has nothing to do with the other individual. That person will continue to do what they do, or they may change, but that has nothing to do with you. I am not an individual who guides people or shows people the way back to their exes. That's not the game that I'm into. I believe that if you have outgrown a space, outgrown a place, outgrown people in your life, then you have outgrown it, and therefore you shall move on. Therefore, when I'm talking about forgiveness, I'm talking about a state of life, a state of consciousness, a state of being where you remove the old and accept the new, where you completely eradicate those things that have been controlling you, those things that have been holding you in place, the patterns of thought, the disruptive emotions that have been stealing your joy time and time again. I am an advocate of removing the bitterness and the resentment that is holding you in place. I'm an advocate of when an individual has done something to you, acknowledging the hurt, acknowledging the experience, accepting that it happened, not writing it off as something that is not important or belittling the situation, but acknowledging it, accepting it, and then moving forward from it and the individual. That's what I'm talking about when I speak of forgiveness. Because some individuals still have it, I guess, backwards, or they have a belief that anytime the word forgiveness comes up, it means going back into a relationship or going back to the person or doing something that involves them. When in truth, the closure that we seek is not actually closure between us and them. It's closure between us and us. It is healing. It is internal healing. There's nothing out there that is going to fix what's going on in here. And so this is why I believe that the most important practice we can cultivate in our lives is that of forgiveness. Because if we don't, we will forever be a slave. And I do mean that word literally. We will forever be a slave to our past experiences, our past traumas, our past abuse, the past hurt. We will never be free of the past if we are not willing to forgive. And that means forgiveness of ourselves and forgiveness of others. Again, I must make this clear because somebody in the comment section may still be looking, to refute this. When I say forgiveness of others, I don't mean letting the person back into your life or saying what they did was right. Because so many of us are justified in our non-forgiveness, believing that it's going to stop the person or stop somebody else from hurting us again. We think that perpetuating the bitterness and the grudges and the resentment is actually serving us, when in truth, it's destroying us. It's an illusion. If there was some sort of entity that was working against your greater good, the number one weapon they would use is unforgiveness, is holding a grudge. And trust me, I've been in a place where I believe that if I held on to a grudge, then I had the power and that person could not hurt me. I believe that I was empowered by holding on to bitterness and resentment. And you know what? It was the exact opposite. Because the more resentment I held on to, the more I held on to that person, the more power I gave them. The more they had complete dominion of my mind. The people that I had even let go of, I hadn't seen in years sometimes, were still roaming in my head rent-free. They had the penthouse suite. They had the complete upper deck. Every single day I couldn't stop thinking about these people. They had me bound and I couldn't even enjoy the relationship that I was in then because I was so fixated on the person. Because hate is energy and energy is focus. And when we focus upon something, it controls our life. Our focus dictates our life. And so it is of the utmost importance, if you are going to heal, if you're going to truly move forward in your life, to forgive. The definition of forgiveness I just gave, that definition. So let's get into what does it look like to actually forgive. So the first part of this process is that of acknowledgement and acceptance. And for many people, this is one of the hardest aspects because we believe that we have to relive the pain. But in truth, even if you suppress or repress the pain, you're still experiencing that pain just in different ways. So you might be projecting it onto others or projecting it onto yourself and, keeping this perpetual cycle of self-sabotage and self-abuse when you don't acknowledge that you were hurt, that, these things did cause you a deep sense of wounding, a deep sense of pain, a deep sense of, a deeper sense of distrust, a deeper sense of a lack of self-worthiness, like where you see yourself from a perspective that you are not enough. And it just perpetuated that cycle that you're probably carrying on from childhood. Because most of these wounds don't happen in our intimate relationships later down in life. They start within our childhood programming. And so they're just perpetuations of those stories that we've been telling ourselves since we were children, that were fed to us by the ones who raised us, the ones who were around us, maybe somebody who had access to us that should not have access to us. And so in order for us to heal from a situation, we must first accept and acknowledge that I was hurt, and I was hurt in this fundamental way. Right? We must come to the root of what the hurt is. So most people say, well, that person cheated on me and that's what did it. That person, that person was belittling me, or that person manipulated me, and so that was the form. That person hit me, and so that was the hurt. When in truth, there is a deeper hurt, and it is about the belief that we hold about ourselves that perpetuates that hurt. So it might be a belief that I'm not deserving of love. I'm not deserving of any love. And that belief would be the core of your hurt. In some cases, it might be the belief that, I deserve to be abused. That might be the belief. And so we're angry at ourselves for holding that belief. And so we masquerade it with, look what people are doing to me. When in truth, you have a deep down story that I am deserving of abuse, or I am deserving of punishment. I am deserving of a whooping, or whatever it may be. And so you have a deep sense of shame, as if I am broken. I'm a broken person. And therefore the things that happen to me, I deserve them. And so when we start to acknowledge what the actual wound is, we can start to look at it objectively. We can start to look at it from almost like a bird's eye view or a third person perspective. Yes, it's going to be painful at first. Yes, it's going to feel dark or grimacing. But when you shine light and expose the truth of something, you are also simultaneously freeing yourself from that thing. Like immediately, you're going to feel a sensation within you. But if you start to cry, if you start to, rage or feel this anger, it's because you're finally stepping out of a place of suppression, and you're raising maybe to anger, raising to a place of rage, raising to a place of, resentment or whatever it may be. But finally, you're looking at the thing and you're exposing light on it. And so it is bringing you to a higher state of awareness, a higher state of consciousness, right? I don't want to get too woo-woo on this, but this is truly what's happening at a spiritual level. And so once you start to look at this for what it is, you acknowledge it and then you accept it. So acknowledging is seeing, and accepting is, this happened. This is how it did make me feel. These things happened. This is how they made me feel. And it made me feel this way about myself and about the other individual. And again, this may not be easy at first. This may not be, peaches and roses or whatever, unicorns and flower type experience. This might still be a painful experience, because you're still holding on to that person. You're still holding on to why you let that person into your life, or why you let them do these things. But you must first also be willing to just accept that this happened, and that's it. It is what it is. I cannot change it, and I don't have to change it in order to move forward with my life. That's acceptance. Is this happened? This is what it is. Okay. But it does not have to control my story. It does not have to control my next chapter. And once you're in that space, you can now see things more objectively. And again, when you start to implement this, you'll see what I mean by the power of it. Like, if I'm just speaking on it and it might be making sense, but it might also be like, okay, but how's that going to help? Only when you're in it do you know. It's kind of like if I was to tell you, what water feels like. First, you're going to immerse yourself and then it's going to feel like this. You can't conceptualize it if you've never been in water, right? So the next step from that is going to be, as wild as it sounds, it's going to be empathy, which is the person that did the thing that they did to you is a hurt person. They are a broken person. You might think this is just a manipulator, they're this, and they are. Maybe that's exactly what they are. But they weren't born that. They weren't born with those characteristics. They weren't born going out and wanting to wreck other people's lives. They were born as pure as you were born. They were born untainted, beautiful, seeing wonder in the world, and yet they experienced whatever it was that created that in them. And you may know what that experience is or you may not. You don't have to know what their certain and specific hurt is because it's still not about them. It's just acknowledging that hurt people truly do hurt people. They perpetuate cycles of abuse and it becomes generational in more cases than not. And so when you can recognize that in them, you can start to recognize it within yourself. You start to look within yourself and say, how much hurt have I caused others or myself because of my own hurt? Right? For me, I had to acknowledge even something that, most may not see as trauma, which is religious trauma syndrome, right? Which is like the programming of a religious indoctrination and the fear of hell, etc. I was jaded when I started to see and seek the truth. I became angry and resentful to the ones who taught me these things because my whole life had been based on fear. My whole life had been based on judgment, on shame. I wasn't good enough. I was a broken person. I wasn't worthy enough. And so when I started to finally see what was going on and then I started to empathize, I realized that the people who are teaching me this, they live their lives on fear. They believe that these things were true because they had no other way to conceptualize their own lives. And so for me, it brought me a sense of first connection to not the individual, but the humanity in them. That all of us, when we are broken, we start to perpetuate that brokenness. Because I was taught to judge others based on what their belief system was, I started to judge others. When I started to ridicule people for what they believed, or when they ridiculed me for what I believed and what I did not, then I started to do the same thing. My own programming, my own conditioning made me do the things that I was doing. Not an excuse for somebody who is an adult who is making their own decisions, but we must first connect to that truth. That they are unconscious and therefore they're going to live from that place. They are broken. And it's not our job to fix them. It's not our job to raise them. It's not our job to be mama, daddy, none of that, right? But it is our job to accept it if we're going to let go of it. And so we recognize in ourselves that I have had the same experiences in some place in my life where I have hurt somebody. And it's not to say, oh, I'm a bad person or I should feel guilty. No. It's objective. Right? It's almost like a detached looking at, damn, like when we're broken, when we're unhealed, we hurt other people. We do the same damage that was done to us to others. We perpetuate it when we're not aware, when we're not conscious, when we don't do the work. And so we become less judgmental of the situation and more aware of the entire situation. And so that is the most foundational element of then coming to a place where you can finally, truly allow the person to go. And this one for many is multifaceted, but again, most things in life are simple, but they may not be easy because we're so addicted to the emotions of the past. Like you've built a habit of distrust. You've built a habit of resentment. You built a habit of bitterness, truly. Because when you think something and you repeat that thought, you're then creating a habit of that thought and the emotions associated. And you might just be perpetuating emotions from your childhood. Like if you grew up in a household filled with chaos, right, filled with distrust, you will always look for ways to find that fix. Like you become addicted to distrust, the emotion of distrust, because emotions are addicting. It's a chemical release in the body. So you start to look for that fix anywhere you go. You might be in a peaceful situation, a person who's completely trustworthy, and then you start to become, paranoid. You start to look for things that they might be doing, etc., because you have that fix that you want to, or you have that addiction that you want to meet with that fix. And so this last section is I believe it is one of the most difficult ones for an individual who is like 1 foot in, 1 foot out, because it's going to take literally you practicing, literally you being conscious and aware and letting go of thoughts in real time. Like, this is a real part of the process of building any new habit. If you're going to start eating healthier, there's an element of you having to choose the healthier food instead of the unhealthy food and create that habit. And I'm not going to give you 21 days, 60 days, 90 days. Like, I believe the habit can change overnight because you've made a conscious, deliberate decision. You've devoted yourself to a life of forgiveness. Because forgiveness is not a momentary thing. It's not an event in most cases. Sometimes we're going to have such a transcending experience that we just completely forgive a person and it's done on that day. But in most cases, forgiveness is going to be you doing it time and time again, letting go, letting go, letting go. And each time you do it, it becomes easier. Each time you do it, you're lightening your load. So a situation might come up and you're letting it go, letting it go, letting it go. But it becomes easier when you do the first two, because now you're just seeing, oh, this is a thought of habit. This is a habitual thought that's coming up. I used to think this way. I used to be addicted to this feeling. Let me let it go, let it go. And the universe has a funny way, right? The creator created us in such a way where when we release something, our vibration raises, or our state of consciousness or awareness raises, and we feel better in that moment. We literally feel the release. That's why a lot of people say you got baggage on you or you feel heavy. Is because when you carry things, it's literally like a vibrational weight. You can feel the heaviness of it. Heavy emotions are like dense vibrations. But the more you release them, the higher vibrationally you become. Don't let these words scare you. Don't worry, they're, as elementary as anything else. So when you finally come to this last step, this is where you make it a lifestyle, right? Like, you may have many people, many situations that you're forgiving, but the baseline is what requires those first two steps. Like, you might not have to do the first two steps for everything. You might just have to do it for the big forgiveness in your life. Maybe it's your mama, maybe it's your daddy, maybe, it's your ex-husband, whatever it is. The big major one is the one that you might have to process. But then once you get to the root of the thing, you realize that a lot of the other things you weren't forgiven before were built on that foundation. And so it becomes easier because you know where it's coming from. Like, example for me, when I realized that I had this addiction to insecurity and feeling insecure, then everything that was rooted on insecurity became easier to let go of because I knew what the root was. So if you're somebody who is in this process, I am opening up my calendar right now for one-on-one coaching to help individuals who are in their emotional healing process and their emotional healing journey to at least know how to take the steps and execute upon them and make this a lifestyle for yourself, because you deserve the freedom, because you deserve the peace of mind, the peace of heart. And so the way that you can reach me is by going in the comment section, not the comment section, the caption below, clicking on the link that's going to bring you directly to my calendar. Book a time that works for you, works for me. We'll have our first consultation and we'll see how it goes. If it's something that is truly beneficial to you, we can move forward. If not, I still want you to continue to at least question why you're holding on to different resentments. At the very least, if this did nothing else for you, at least allow yourself to question and try this out for yourself. And then you can tell me if it doesn't work for you.